You can make and freeze them. And it's so great to be able to just pull a little bit out. If you don't want to shape it into a roll and slice it, you can pack it in a Ziploc bag, flatten it out, and then you just open the bag, crack off a corner, and seal it back up again. Okay, so that's how easy it is to make this so-called fancy butter. We'll get our sprouts into our serving bowl. And they really do hold together well when you prepare them by hand with care. So now we're going to dollop a little bit of this butter on here. You don't want to overwhelm them, but there needs to be enough that each sprout gets a little bit of a kiss of the flavor. Okay, I'm going to give that a stir. The sprouts are nice and hot, so the butter's melting very quickly. And we haven't yet added our salt and pepper because I want it to be sitting on top. My big thing is about layering the flavors so that they're not as muddled. Sometimes that's pleasurable, like in a pasta sauce or whatever, but for vegetable dishes, I really want to be able to discern all the different flavor components. Okay, I'm happy with that. A little bit of salt. A little bit of pepper. I'm going to be very pleased to serve up these sprouts at our next meal. If you're looking for easy and flavorful new ideas for vegetables, I hope today's show provides you with some fresh inspiration. I encourage you to try these beautiful crispy Brussels sprouts with chive balsamic butter, or perhaps this southern style creamy corn. And don't forget about this potato salad with asparagus and radishes. It's a winner. Love your vegetables and eat them often.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Are you low on food? Struggling to pay the bills? Overwhelmed by life's challenges? When you need support but don't know where to turn, just dial 211. 211 connects you to the programs or services near you.
211, how can I help you?
211, help starts here.
Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're going to start in about 1 minute. Thank you. Merci. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I'd like to call the meeting to order. As we begin our meeting today, and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Just before we pause for a moment of personal reflection, I want to emphasize that this is Veterans Week in Ottawa. I proclaimed it as Veterans Week, and I want to take a moment as we pause for reflection to honor all of our veterans. There are 10,000 veterans living in Ottawa right now, and all our past and present veterans, including and especially those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. So for those who are able, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you, merci. And if you're able, please remain standing. And I will ask Councillor King now to introduce the performer of our national anthem.
Thank you so much, Your Worship, and good morning. It is my distinct honor to introduce Rideau Rockcliffe resident Pauline van der Roost, who will perform our national anthem. Born in the Netherlands, Pauline has performed as a mezzo-soprano soloist in Canada, the Netherlands, and the United States. Locally, Pauline has performed for Ottawa's longest still in operation opera company, Op Ottawa, as well as New Opera Lyric. She has performed with an assistant director of the New York Metropolitan Opera, with the orchestra of the Royal Netherlands Air Force, and was a soloist at the European Union's Christmas concert in 2017. In 2017, she also performed a musical homage to Canada to celebrate the liberation of the Netherlands during the Second World War at the Canadian War Museum. And most recently, she performed both our national and royal anthems at an event of remembrance to commemorate local veterans in Rideau Rockcliffe last weekend. These tributes are fitting as we observe National Aboriginal Veterans Day today, Veterans Week, and Remembrance Day this Saturday. It is my privilege to welcome Pauline to Ottawa City Hall and invite her to sing our national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. A ton bras et porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for
Thank you very much for that amazing rendition of our national anthem. I will now ask the Deputy City Clerk to do the roll call, please.
Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Dudas. Present. Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Curry. Here. Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Gower. Councillor Kavanaugh. Here. Councillor Johnson. Here. Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Bradley. Here. Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Plante. Ici. Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Troster. Here. Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Carr. Present. Councillor Kitts. Here. Councillor DeRoos.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Deroche.
Ici.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So before we get to the budget items on our agenda today, we'll go through some of the other items, including the bulk consent agenda. So we'll start with the confirmation of minutes from the council meeting of October 25th, 2023. Are those minutes carried? Are there any declarations of interest? I'll note there are no communications received, no regrets were received. Can I have a motion to introduce reports? Councillor Kavanaugh. You have it? We can get it to you.
Apologies. That the following reports related to the 2024 draft budget estimates be received and tabled. The report from the Chief Financial Officer, Finance and Corporate Services Department entitled 2024 Draft Operating and Capital Budgets. 2, the report from the Committee of Adjustment entitled Committee of Adjustment 2024 Draft Operating Budget. The report from Ottawa Police Services Board entitled Ottawa Police Services Board 2024 Draft Operating and Capital Budgets. The report from Ottawa Public Library Board entitled Ottawa Public Library 2024 Draft Budget Estimates. The report from the Ottawa Board of Health entitled 2024 Draft Operating Budget from the Ottawa Board of Health, and that the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider the following reports from the Finance and Corporate Services Department as they provide information supplemental to the 2024 budget reports being tabled at this meeting. The report from the Director of Fleet Services entitled 2024 Fleet Vehicle and Equipment Plans, information supplemental to the budget estimates. 2, the report from the Director of Human Resources entitled FTE Analysis Report, information supplemental to the budget estimates, and that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 8, Community Services Committee Report 6, and Planning and Housing Committee Report 17 be received and considered, and that the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider Finance and Corporate Services Report 9 due to the time sensitivity of the item contained in the report. Yeah.
Okay, is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you, Councillor Gavanaugh. We're going to jump to item 17 on the agenda, Community Services Committee Report. Item 17.1 is the update on social assistance modernization and employment services transformation. Is that received?
Received.
Item 17.2 is geographically equitable distribution of access to resources and social services. Is that carried? Item 17.3 is the Community Garden Action Plan Review and Update. Is that carried? Okay. Is it a quick question? Okay. Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Mayor. On this matter, I appreciate the matter coming through committee. I just want to make sure staff's understanding of what needs to be done here is what my understanding is, and that is the main issue in my ward is the amount of time it takes from the commencement of an application to when an application is finally approved for community garden. And I just want to make sure that process, the hurdles that are in place that prolong an application are all part of this review, that we're actually going to have a service standard benchmark, applications approved within 90 days. But I just want to make sure that is part of the review and focus, that we're trying to streamline this process and make it easier and faster for community groups to get approval.
Yes, Mayor, that's our understanding, that will be included for gardens as well as other amenities on public lands.
Okay, thanks very much, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. So is that carried? Item 17.4 is Lower Town Community Resource Center relocation. Is that carried? Item 18 is Finance and Corporate Services Committee. 18.1 is the acquisition lease for transitional housing for families. Is that carried? Item 19 is the Planning and Housing Committee report. And for item 19.1, I understand there's a technical amendment. Councillor Menard?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's just a technical amendment around the maximum permitted driveway width. So whereas the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw to permit a 19-story high-rise apartment building at 178, 180, 182, and 200 Isabella Street, and whereas a provision in the details of recommended zoning would effectively create an unnecessary maximum permitted driveway width, and whereas the application does not require the creation of a maximum permitted driveway width, therefore be resolved that Council amend Planning and Housing Committee Report 17, Item 1, Zoning Bylaw Amendment 178, 180, 182, and 200 Isabella Street by deleting Document 2, Section 2, C8 in its entirety and renumbering the remainder of Document 2, Section 2C accordingly, and therefore be it resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to Section 3417 of the Planning Act as amended.
Okay, is the amendment carried? And the item as amended, carried?
Carried.
Item 19.2 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 222 Baseline Road. Is that carried? Item 19.3 regarding office to residential conversions. I understand there's a direction related to that. Is that right?
Yes, Your Worship. I wanted to introduce a direction that staff be directed to examine and evaluate the potential of an office to residential conversion community improvement plan incentive within the context of the financial incentive pilot program for the office to residential conversion report expected to be reported in Q1 of 2024.
Okay. Thank you for that. And is the item carried? Okay. Moving on to the bulk consent agenda, there are a couple of, there are, I believe, 3 technical amendments within the bulk consent agenda. So the first one is for 20.1.2 for 1500 Thomas Argue Road. I understand, Councillor Kelly, you have a technical amendment?
Thank you, Mayor.
Whereas the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw to permit single detached dwellings and townhouse units in place of residential hangar lots at 1500 Thomas Argy Road. Whereas the area in the zoning map in document 1 of the report is not identified by an area label. And whereas staff intended to label the unidentified area in the zoning key map as Area A, therefore be it resolved the council amend the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee Report 8, Item 2, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, 1500 Thomas Argy Road, by replacing the zoning map in document 1 with the document included as attachment 1 to this motion. Be it further resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to Section 34, subsection 17 of the Planning Act. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Is the technical amendment carried?
Carried.
And then the item as amendment, is that as amended, is that carried?
Carried.
On item 20.3, Planning and Housing Committee Report 17, the 20.3.1 is the bylaw amendment for 1400 Upper Canada Street. And I understand that there is a technical amendment from Councillor Curry. Councillor Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas report ACS 2023 PREPS 0129, the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw to permit a heavy equipment and vehicle sales, rental and servicing use at 1400 Upper Canada Street. And whereas the report requires a reference to the details of recommended zoning in the recommendations to give effect to the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw. And whereas the report's recommendations unintentionally omit a reference to the details of recommended zoning, therefore be it resolved that Council amend Planning and Housing Committee Report 17, Item 2, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, 1400 Upper Canada Street, by replacing the text of Recommendation 1 with the following. 1, that Planning and Housing Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to the zoning bylaw number 2008-250 for 1400 Upper Canada Street as shown in Document 1 as detailed in Document 2, and therefore be it resolved that no further notice pursuant to Section 3417 of the Planning Act.
Okay, is that carried?
Carried.
And the item as amended, is that carried?
Carried.
Okay, item 20.3.2 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 4338 Innes Road, and I understand Councillor Kitts has a technical amendment for that. Councillor
Yes,
Kitts?
thank you, Mayor. Whereas the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa's zoning bylaw to permit an internal reconfiguration of the existing commercial space, which will result in a slight reduction in total retail space on the ground floor at 4338 Innes Road. And whereas the report requires a reference to the details of recommended zoning in the recommendations to give effect to the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw, and whereas the report's recommendations unintentionally omit a reference to the details of recommended zoning, therefore be it resolved that Council amend Planning and Housing Committee Report 17, Item 3, Zoning Bylaw Amendment 4338 Innes Road by replacing the text of Recommendation 1 with the following. 1, the Planning and Housing Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to the zoning bylaw for 338 Innes Road as shown in Document 1 as detailed in Document 2, and be it further resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to Section 3417 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 P13 as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Kitts. Is that amendment carried?
Carried.
And the item is amended, carried? And is the rest of the bulk consent agenda carried? Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's move to our budget for 2024. So we'll have a presentation shortly from the city manager and the chief financial officer, but I will start with my own remarks on the budget. Thank you for sticking around for that, Councillor Menard. During my first year as mayor, I have had the incredible honor of meeting thousands and thousands of Ottawa residents. It is truly my favorite part of the job. And in particular, over the last month leading up to the budget process, I've been knocking on doors and chatting with residents throughout our wonderful, diverse, and enormous city. I've been to the Glebe and to Barhaven. I've been to Orleans and Canada. I've been to Metcalfe and Stittsville and so many other parts of our city. It's always fascinating to me to cut through the noise on social media and hear directly from residents about what's happening in their lives and what really matters to them. Today, we are introducing a budget that will not only address the priorities we set out as a council, but respond to the concerns of our residents. Aujourd'hui, nous présentons un budget qui non seulement répondra
Today, we will present a budget that will actually address the priorities we set as a council, but respond to the concerns of residents.
We've all heard from residents that they are struggling with rising costs and worried about the future of our economy. They don't want to see us add to their burden with big tax increases. I've heard from residents that they're very pleased last year we approved a budget that met my campaign promise of 2.5% or less. And this budget does exactly the same. We've all heard from residents in many parts of the city that they want more recreational infrastructure and public spaces. Dans de nombreux quartiers d'Ottawa, les résidents
In many parts of the city, they want more recreational infrastructure and public space.
construction of an exciting new community recreation complex in Riverside South. We will also begin to advance other projects at Mooney's Bay, including major new district parks for Jock River North, Jock River South, and also at François Dupuis Community Center. This budget will include the city's share of funding, which when combined with federal and provincial dollars, will replace Genet Outdoor Pool in Vanier, and will expand the Larry Robinson Arena in Metcalfe, and also undertake major improvements to the Tony Graham Recreation Complex in Canada. And we will continue the investment and the exceptional work that's being done for our new downtown library at Asoke. Rural residents of Ottawa have told us that they want to ensure their priorities and their unique circumstances are understood and addressed by this council. That's why we will be investing in a rural summit in 2024 that will bring our rural communities together and ensure that their priorities are central to our future plans. Les habitants francophones nous ont dit
The
qu'ils
French-speaking resident told us that they want to have more services in French within the city of Ottawa. The French services will receive an increase of $216,000 for interpretation services to support the council meetings, as well as to support translation services. We will also have more places in French-speaking services for young kids. We will have an increase of 125 new places between 2023 and 2026.
often that they are very concerned about the state of our roads and sidewalks. In 2024, we will invest more than $900 million in the renewal of city infrastructure. We're doubling our annual investment to improve our sidewalks. We're starting a new program to improve our multi-use pathways and lighting. And we're investing approximately $100 million in road renewal. In addition, we will be allocating more than $20 million to the Greenbank Road realignment. And we'll be spending more than $14 million on new multi-use pathways, new sidewalks, and new cycling infrastructure. As we all know, Ottawa has experienced extreme weather events that have resulted in more frequent power outages that have also disrupted city services. We must be better prepared in the future. That's why we're investing $21.7 million in an electrical reliability project at the Robert O. Pickard Environmental Center in the east end of our city. This is a critical initiative that will bring a proper backup power distribution to Ottawa's sewage treatment plant and increase electrical reliability. We have all heard from residents that they want a better and more reliable public transit service. That's why we're increasing the funding for transit by $31 million in 2024. And we've also identified an additional $10 million in savings within the transit service that can be reinvested into more reliable service. C'est pourquoi nous augmentons le financement.
This is the reason why we will increase the funding for transit by $31 million in 2024. We also identified an additional $10 million in savings within the transit service that can be reinvested in more reliable services.
In 2024, we will relaunch the Trillium Line and other parts of Phase 2 will follow. This will dramatically change how people get around our city, and we must calibrate our investment in public transit to support this historic change. We've heard from residents that they're concerned about affordable housing, deeply concerned. This budget will invest more than $214 million toward housing. That includes a new level of capital investment in affordable housing of $21.8 million. It also includes another $5 million towards transitional housing. That's a total of $26.8 million, an increase of more than $10 million compared to last year. Cela comprend un nouveau niveau d'investissement dans
This includes a new level of funding in affordable housing, namely $21.8 million. It also includes another $5 million towards transitional housing.
We've also heard concerns from our residents about food insecurity. That's why we're investing more than $400,000 in new funding to support agencies providing food security to the most vulnerable. We've heard from our residents that they're concerned about safety. That's why we're allocating additional funds this year for a total of $1.8 million toward community engagement teams and crisis outreach to provide urgent resources to specific neighborhoods. We're also opening a new police resource center adjacent to both the Byward Market and Sandy Hill. We're adding another 25 positions to the Ottawa Police Service to address growing demand. I'm pleased to see, by the way, the police service is talking about moving to a district model, meaning there will be more service in the suburban and rural parts of our city. We've heard from residents that they continue to be worried that when they or a loved one need an ambulance, it won't be available. Des résidents nous ont dit qu'ils continuaient à craindre.
Residents were telling us that they're worried that when they or a loved one need an ambulance, it won't be available.
Staff at our paramedic service. We're also working closely with the provincial Minister of Health to address offload issues at our hospitals. And we are increasing funding to the new alternate response support program. This will allow for a compassionate response in Centertown to support people experiencing a mental health crisis. I want to take this moment once again, as I do every chance I get, to thank the amazing people who work in emergency services, our police officers, our paramedics, and our firefighters for the outstanding work that they do every single day to keep us safe. Throughout the budget process over the next 4 weeks, there will be much opportunity to review and discuss these numbers and new areas of spending, but I want to briefly expand on a couple of these points today to offer more clarity. People may ask how we're able to keep tax increases so low when inflation is rising rapidly. First, our costs, fortunately, are not rising as quickly as household costs, which is another reason why we must help our residents with the affordability crisis. Tout d'abord, nos coûts n'augmentent pas aussi vite que...
So our costs are not rising as quickly as household costs, which is why we must help our residents with the affordability crisis.
Second, we have done a lot of work to identify savings and efficiencies that we can reinvest in our greatest priorities. Our service review has begun, it has done a lot of work, and it will continue for many, many months. So far, Councillor Carr, Councillor Curry, and I have overseen a process with city staff through which we've listened to union officials, city departments, service providers, local boards, and other partners. Together with other initiatives that have been taken by city staff, we have found almost $27 million in savings to invest in our priorities. Again, I want to underline, these are not service cuts, they are savings and efficiencies that are being reinvested in this budget. Our revenue from taxes and other sources will increase next year by $220 million. Because we found savings and efficiencies, we have even more money than that to invest in our most important priorities. There is much more to come in the months ahead as our work continues, just like the residents of Ottawa who are carefully re-examining their household budgets in the face of increasing pressures. We are doing the same at the City of Ottawa. Our constant quest is to ensure that we are getting the highest value possible for every dollar of taxpayers' money that we invest on your behalf. And we have only just begun. I want to talk further about one of our greatest areas of investment and one of our most important priorities, public transit. As I've said many times, I've been using public transit my whole life. My family uses it regularly, every week. It's a vital service for our residents, and we must do everything we can to protect this service and ensure it is viable for many years to come. Many things have changed as a result of the pandemic, but few things have changed more than the way we move around our city. People are traveling downtown less often. They're going to different places at different times. And let's be abundantly clear, they are taking public transit much less often. Our ridership is down by 30%. In the face of these changes, and given that we are still not receiving the continuous support that we need from our federal and provincial partners, we must do everything we can to allocate our resources as wisely and as effectively as possible. We have to find savings and reinvest those savings in better service. Our customers have told us they want more reliable service. I'm pleased to see that OC Transpo is prioritizing reliability and setting a goal of reaching 99.5% reliability in the years ahead. With ridership and revenues down significantly, and without support from other levels of government, we are still investing deeply in public transit. Our transit budget will increase by $31 million in 2024 to more than $767 million. That's the biggest budget for transit we've ever had. Notre budget de transport augmentera de 31.
Our transit budget will increase by $31 million in 2024 to more than $767 million. That's the biggest budget we've ever had.
In addition, OC Transpo has found $10 million in savings and efficiencies with underutilized and low-performing routes and other measures. These savings are being reinvested in new spending to ensure higher levels of service and reliability where there is the greatest demand. These are tough decisions, but I know the public understands that we must invest our transit dollars wisely for the greatest impact. And let's not forget that in addition to those investments, we're continuing with the $4.7 billion investment in Stage 2 of light rail. In 2024 alone, we will see more than $366 million invested in Stage 2, with an additional $11.9 million in 2024 supporting the Rail Operational Readiness Program. And we're investing almost $200 million to fund the replacement of 91 zero-emission buses. So public transit remains a huge priority. It will always be a huge priority, and it remains a huge investment for our city. That will only continue with the rollout of Stage 2. On the subject of affordable housing, I want to point out again that for the first time in our city, we have more supportive housing units than shelter beds. And we have another 831 affordable housing units currently under construction. But it's still not enough, which is why with new spending this year, more than $10 million increase over last year, that's why that's so important. It would be impossible for me to deliver a speech about our municipal finances without urgently stressing the need for support from other levels of government. I spoke earlier about my favorite part of the job, speaking with the wonderful people of Ottawa. Perhaps a more frustrating part of the job is the requirement for me to be constantly asking for help from the provincial and federal governments. If we're going to build more affordable housing, if we're going to properly fund public transit in the future, if we're going to do everything necessary to support the most vulnerable, particularly with the number of people arriving in our city seeking asylum, we must have more help from our federal and provincial partners. There simply is no other way. Si nous voulons construire davantage de logements
So if we're going to build more affordable housing, if we're going to properly fund public transit in the future, if we're going to do everything necessary to support the most vulnerable, we must have more help from our federal and provincial partners. There simply is no other way.
This past weekend, I was chatting with a resident in Vars who said that he noticed that this council was working very collaboratively together, especially when compared with last term. I agreed with him. I think in the past year, including our first budget and our priority setting process, we've had an excellent start. But let's remember that our residents are counting on us to continue to work together. They're faced with so many challenges right now. Think about what the people of Ottawa are reading about every day. There are international crises and political polarization. There's economic uncertainty. There's climate change. There's an affordability crisis, a housing crisis, a homelessness crisis, an opioid crisis, a mental health crisis. All of these challenges are weighing on every single one of us and every single resident of Ottawa. In times like this, it's very easy to fall into the trap of division. It's easy to get caught up in petty differences. We can't let that happen to us. We must continue to work together as we have for the past year. Let's work together to build a better city for everyone, a city that is safe, reliable, and affordable, a city with sustainable growth, a city that cares and looks after its most vulnerable, a city that imagines a better future and works hard to achieve it, a city that generates maximum value for every tax dollar spent, with a budget that is targeted to our greatest and most urgent priorities. Travaillons ensemble pour construire une ville meilleure pour tous.
Let's work together to build a better city for everyone, a city that is safe, reliable, and affordable, a city with sustainable growth, a city that cares and looks after its most vulnerable, a city that imagines a better future and works hard to achieve it, a city that generates maximum value for every dollar spent, with a budget that is targeted to our greatest and most urgent priorities.
At this critical time, we cannot let our residents down. We must remember it's not about us, it's about them. We must continue to work together every day for the people of Ottawa, every single one of them. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. I'll now ask our City Manager, Wendy Stephenson, to provide some opening remarks on the budget.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire, and thank you very much for your leadership, your guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
In building our 2024 draft budget. And good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I want to begin this morning by recognizing the efforts of our Finance and Corporate Services Department that's led by our interim Chief Financial Officer, Cyril Rogers, beside me here this morning, along with my colleagues around the table today, the senior leadership team, and their staff for their diligent work that they've put into building the budget that aligns with the Council's term of priorities. And the process began in the summer, and they have all put in countless hours. So my thanks to all of my colleagues. My thanks as well to members of Council for your input and collaboration in this process. The Mayor ensured that councillors were engaged earlier in the budget development process this year, and I really want to take the opportunity to thank you all for your valuable input and your insights. And I want to emphasize that this draft budget invests in making Ottawa more resilient and connected city. This draft budget invests in the services and initiatives that advance Council identified priorities for the term with the goal of making Ottawa a better city for all. The budget before you focuses on affordable housing to help ensure that Ottawa is more livable for all residents, as well as making investments toward making our city more connected with reliable, safe, and accessible mobility options. It also recognizes the importance of continued investment in creating a city that is green and resilient, as well as a city that has a diversified and prosperous economy. And again, this year, staff have applied the climate change lens to the budget to highlight the investments that the city is making to reduce the city's GHG emissions and to build our resiliency. We start the budget process every year considering the cost pressures and advancing Council's priorities. And I believe the budget strikes the right balance between spending on existing services and investing in our future. And I want to acknowledge staff's ongoing commitment to continuous improvement, innovation, and creativity throughout this budget process. With the Service Review Working Group's oversight, along with councillors and staff input, significant base budget reinvestments have been enabled through the service reviews completed to date. And the mayor spoke to some of those investments in his speech. More than 700 ideas have been received from members of council and staff to date, really talking about how we can improve the way we work and evolve our programs and services to help find further efficiencies. And the efficiencies and savings resulting from the ideas coming from the service reviews are being reinvested in frontline services and initiatives that advance council priorities that will benefit our community. And as requested by council, and in keeping in line with one of my key priorities as city manager to strengthen transparency and accountability, I'm very proud of the work that staff have done throughout this budget development process to enhance and improve budget literacy, accessibility, and transparency. And I want to recognize the work they've done to make it easier for residents, for businesses, and community groups to become engaged in the process. With tools like our new interactive and user-friendly budget tool, it's going to be available on ottawa.ca following today's council meeting. And in closing, I want to reiterate today that the 2024 draft budget was a collaborative effort between elected officials, staff, residents, and stakeholders, with the ultimate goal of benefiting our entire community and moving our city forward. My thanks to everyone who's worked hard to deliver this draft budget today. I'm going to hand it over to Cyril and his team to kick off the presentation. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Wendy. Good. I'm here today with my colleague Suzanne to present the 2024 draft budget. Today, we will provide an overview of the 24 draft budget directions, speak to budget transparency, budget enhancements, provide a brief overview of our operating and capital budgets and funding sources, and present a number of key investments towards the term of council priorities. Only a summary is provided today, as the detailed budgets will be presented to each of the committee, board, or commission following today's tabling. Today's budget reflects a significant and bold change to the city's enhanced budget documents, tools, and information, and our continued commitment to transparency and improving budget literacy. Next slide, please. You will recall in September, we came to council with the 2024 budget directions report with a proposed recommended property tax of no more than 2.5%. And we received council endorsement of the budget strategies required to achieve the proposed tax levies. Having a predefined tax increase is standard in municipal budgeting. It helps council keep tax increases at a sustainable level and provides a strong fiscal discipline and financial management. Strong financial management and financial sustainability is a commitment in the organization and priority to the city and our residents. It's the foundation of our success. These commitments are guided by council-approved long-range financial plans, fiscal framework, strategic asset management plans, reserve management plans, ongoing continuous improvement initiatives, the approved service review framework and principles, and the term of council priorities. Today's table draft budget reflects the approved budget directions with one exception. Since September 13, 2023, an updated assessment growth from 1.5% to 1.7% is reflected in today's tabled budgets. This resulted in an overall increased assessment growth of an increase of 4.125 million. As identified in the directions report, of all the city services, the greatest financial challenge in 2024 is with OC Transpo. OC Transpo continues to face financial pressures as the service continues to realign the changing ridership needs. Given these continued financial challenges, staff have allocated the additional assessment growth towards the 2024 draft transit budget for committee and council consideration. Next slide, please. The city's detailed budget continues to contain extensive information, right down to the service and program level of details, at the expenditure type level and respective funding sources. The budget provides funding sources by type for expenditures,
previous year actuals to show trends and comparisons, includes a 4-year capital forecast summary at the project level. Extensive details are provided on over 400 projects and on over 100 programs, in addition to providing status updates on over 1,700 projects. Some of this level of detail is not new. However, we've made significant strides in the 2024 budget to make these details easier to consume, in addition to providing additional level of details, making our city budget one of the most detailed and transparent municipal budgets. Next slide, please. Immediately following the approval of the 2023 budget, we engage with residents about how they interact with and consume budget information. We also met with each councillor for feedback on the budget and the engagement process. The information we collected was invaluable and led us to several enhancements for the 2024 budget. These enhancements were built and incorporated in a short time period as we built 2 budgets in a calendar year following the election. These enhancements increase municipal budget literacy, improves the navigation of budget documentation, enhanced reporting, focusing on highlighting investments in services and programs that our residents rely on and care about the most. And the 2024 draft budget will also better identify how programs and services are aligned to determine council priorities. To begin, we adjusted our consultation timeline with the mayor and elected officials. These meetings were held earlier in the process to provide more opportunity and incorporate feedback. In September, we hosted a Budget 101 technical briefing for media and members of council. We also met with many members of the media one-on-one to answer further questions about the complexities of the municipal budget. We've created a new magazine style document in front of you today, which provides insight into how we build the budget, the various legislation and policy that provide parameters for our budget, how the city operates, key investments, details on priority initiatives, and perhaps the most consistent requests received from council to make the connection to determine council priorities. Through this document, we've done so. We're also launching a new online budget tool today on ottawa.ca. The draft budget tool visualizes city financial information with interactive charts, graphs, and tables. The open budget tool will help the community gain a deeper understanding of the elements and terminology related in the city's budget. It makes key budget details accessible to the public in a more interactive and transparent manner. It's part of the open data program where you can find different stats and information on all city services and programs. I would like to thank the data analytics team for their collaboration in helping us build these new tools. Next slide, please. We've also made significant efforts to enhance our engagement on the budget. As I mentioned earlier, immediately following the approval of the 23 budget, we met with each member of City Council one-on-one to hear their thoughts on the budget process and engagements. Simultaneously, we released an online public survey to hear from residents on how they would like to engage and consume the budget. Residents have various ways they can provide input on the draft budget and are always encouraged to provide feedback directly to the local ward councillor. Many of you also hold public budget consultations to collect feedback from your residents, which I or a member of my team often participate in. This year, the public consultations began in October and will continue through the month of November across the city. Residents can also submit questions and comments on the draft 24 budget through the city's public engagement website via Engage Ottawa. To promote these avenues, we have begun enhancing our social media posts using electronic advertisements, create a new promotional video to promote the various ways residents can engage with throughout the budget process. Now that the 2024 draft budget is tabled, all budget documents are posted on ottawa.ca and available in a hard copy at public libraries and client service centers. Draft budgets will be reviewed by the respective standing committees, boards, and commission held throughout the month of November and December, and residents can attend each of those meetings and register as a speak as a public delegation. Next slide. In March of 2023, Council approved the service review framework as outlined in the 2023 draft operating and capital budgets report. This framework outlines the policies and principles to assess services for review, identify potential improvements, and determine the best way to deliver those services. The work of the Service Review Working Group, comprised of Councillor Carr, Councillor Curry, and the Mayor, commenced shortly after the adoption of the 2023 draft budget. Several service reviews were launched, including the bus route review, corporate accommodation and leases review, fleet optimization review, and revenue opportunities analysis. As part of the OC Transpo's 5-year roadmap, the bus route review was launched earlier this year to review and confirm service planning principles to prepare for the opening of old train lines 2 and 4 and determine a network that design and meets the evolving needs of our customers. This initiative continues with our commitment towards a better transit network, integrating buses and trains. Next slide, please. The goal and the purpose of the fleet transformation is to optimize the way we use our resources, ensuring we have the right equipment and vehicles and standardized and appropriately sized fleet to deliver our services. We've also had a keen focus on continuing investments in greening our fleet and leveraging and enhancing data to drive decision making. These measures will help ensure the city continues to provide an effective and efficient service. One example illustrated is the implementation of a refurbishment program. The grader on the top left side of the slide is a 12-year-old grader. The one on the bottom is the exact same grader that we were able to leverage a local supplier to perform a full overhaul and refurbishment program. By doing so, we extend the life of that same unit by 12 years, and we save approximately $300,000 versus the traditional replacement life cycle process. Next slide. There are a number of ongoing reviews, such as the corporate accommodation and leases review, revenue opportunities review, and it's anticipated that there's additional savings realized in 2024 that will be brought forward through the 2025 draft operating and capital budgets. To reiterate, the service reviews are a complement to the city's ongoing approach to continuous improvement to ensure more effective and efficient service delivery. They're also intended to identify potential funding sources that can be reinvested into the strategic priorities of this term of council. Collectively, the service reviews have contributed $19.4 million in base operating budget savings and $2.5 million in capital savings. With the continuous improvements and efficiency initiatives, total savings and cost avoidance included in the citywide tax-supported 2024 draft budget is $26.8 million, which is equivalent to a 1.3% foregone tax levy. I will now pass to my colleague Suzanne to present the next few slides.
Thank you, Cyril. Next slide, please. The 2024 operating savings resulting from the service reviews and continuous improvement efforts that Cyril just referred to are reflected in the draft 2024 operating budget totaling $4.6 billion for tax and rate supported services. As seen on the slide, each service grouping is listed showing the budgeted net expenditure requirement and its proportion of the total budget. Community and Social Services has a draft budget of just under $976 million, representing 21% of the total budget. About 72% of that budget is funded by revenues, primarily from provincial and federal funding. These services delivered from this group has the highest ratio of government funding in the organization for areas such as employment and social services, children's services, housing services, and long-term care. Transit Services has a draft budget of $731.2 million, which is just under 16% of the total budget. Its revenues fund about 44% of its expenses, but unlike Community and Social Services, there are no budgeted revenues from provincial and federal government. Moving along to the far right side of the slide, water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste services present a draft budget of $616.3 million. These expenses are funded from its own revenues. Next slide, please. Ontario municipal budgets are legislated to be balanced, meaning its expenditures must match its revenues. Unlike provincial and federal budgets, the City of Ottawa cannot budget for deficits. Therefore, total revenues for the city are also budgeted at $4.6 billion. Nearly half of that is from property taxes, bringing in nearly $2.2 billion, based on a tax increase of no more than 2.5%. 23% of its revenues, totaling just over $1 billion, are from fees and service charges. 20% is funding from other levels of government. There is also payment in lieu of taxes, also known as PILTs. These revenues are related to federal government properties as they do not receive a traditional property tax bill. The balance of revenues comes from reserves and other revenues such as investment income. Next slide, please. Avant de passer au chiffre de budget des immobilisations,
Before going to the capital budget, I'd like to review the operations of the capital budget. In the 2024 budget, a four-year forecast from 2024 to 2027 is based on the council-approved plans, such as a transportation master plan, the infrastructure master plan, the 2019 development charges background study, and the LRFPs. The fiscal framework approved by council limits the debt. At the provincial level, this limit is of 25%. However, council has reduced this limit to 7.5% for the financial services and 15% of own source revenue. Then the 2024 budgeted debt servicing is at 4.1% and 12% for the own source revenues. These numbers are way lower than the limits, and that's thanks to the credit rating of the city.
Le budget préliminaire des immobilisations de 2024.
The capital program total $4 billion. The capital budget reflects the investment in our infrastructure, community services, sidewalks, streets, sewers, libraries, and the equipment, to name a few. On this slide, we can have the same investment here with $1.24 billion. Our capital budget is currently funded by our reserve fund, which represents some 60% of total funding.
So this is about $353 million is financed by debt, and about 180 million are financed by development charges, cash, and debt. This comes mainly from provincial and federal funding.
Enfin, nous examinons le même budget des immobilisations.
Then we have exactly the same budget with $1.24 billion, but divided by city service category. About 75% of the budget will be geared toward the renewal of city assets. About $264 million, about 21%, will be invested for growth. And then 61 million will be geared towards regulatory and service enhancement. I will give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you, Suzanne. Next slide, please. So a main point that we heard loud and clear from our meetings with councillors is that you would like to see more connections between the budget and the term of council priorities. Budget 2024 makes a clear connection to the council's priorities. You will see the four main widgets on the screen throughout the new magazine budget document, which provides greater details on our investments in the 2024 budget to achieving priorities of council. As a reminder, what I'll walk through on the next few slides is a high-level reflection of some of these investments. It's not all-encompassing. Additional details will be provided through the committee budget presentations as well, in addition to the content in the magazine. Next slide, please. Ottawa's housing system provides a range of options for emergency shelters to supportive, transitional, and affordable housing. Through city investments and funding from the provincial and federal government, we're looking to build more affordable housing so every resident has a safe place to call home. In alignment with the strategic priority to increase affordable housing and make Ottawa more livable for all, Draft Budget 2024 is allocating additional investments to decreasing this gap within our communities. The refreshed Housing Long-Range Financial Plan will be presented later this month, outlining the additional capital investment towards the Housing Long-Range Financial Plan. In the draft 2024 budget, the annual investment is increasing from $15 million to $21.8 million in 2024, growing to $25 million by 2027. In addition, and new to this budget, is a $5 million base budget investment for transitional housing. As our population continues to grow and natural disasters seem to have become more common, we are investing in our emergency services to improve response times and putting further supports in place, including emergency reception lodging generators and additional paramedics to address the increasing demands of this service. Next slide. City's recreation centers, parks, sports fields, bike lanes, and multi-use pathways all across the city. 2024 draft capital budget includes funds to help increase amenities that contribute to our active communities and maintain existing infrastructure. We also provide programming and access to high-quality arts, culture, and heritage services in collaboration with community partners to contribute to Ottawa's vibrant cultural identity and heritage. Our city has become a top choice for new Canadians, and we are fortunate to be so diverse. The City of Ottawa is honored to be identified as one of Canada's best diversity employers, and we're committed to ensuring healthy, respectful neighborhoods and communities for our residents. Draft Budget 2024 includes investments that directly support the city's Indigenous, gender, race, and equity strategic priorities, including 3 additional resources to support this strategic initiative. Next slide, please. The 2024 draft capital budget continues to include the application of a climate change lens to provide information on relevant impacts from climate-related capital investments. More than ever, we need to invest in ways to make Ottawa more resilient to climate change. It means planting more trees, investing in greener technologies to reduce greenhouse gases, emissions, and making investments to mitigate and reduce flood risks. The draft 2024 budget includes $278 million towards climate change contributions. Next slide, please. The city is also committed to reducing emissions through the city's fleet with investments, as you see on the screen, approximately $180 million towards zero-emission bus program and over $4 million towards greening the municipal fleet. We're also currently working hard on our solid waste master plan to determine how we manage waste over the next 30 years. Draft 2024 budget ensures that as Ottawa grows and changes, our waste services evolve to meet the new needs and challenges of our residents. Next slide, please. The budget focuses on city's efforts where they can have the greatest impact, reducing collisions. In order to make our streets safer, the city invests in technologies like red light cameras, speed display boards, automated speed enforcement, and other traffic calming measures. We are also prioritizing future road, transit, and active transportation projects to make our city more connected. The draft 2024 budget includes additional investments in cycling infrastructure, multi-use pathways, sidewalks, and over $20 million towards the Greenbank realignment project. Next slide, please. City of Ottawa has continued to creating more vibrant, healthy, and complete neighborhoods across the municipality while ensuring long-term affordability for our city and our residents. Our roads, sidewalks, and improving transit reliability are key contributors to the health of our neighborhoods. It's vital that we continue to invest in our infrastructure to ensure residents can move around the city safely. The draft 2024 budget includes doubling the investment towards the minor sidewalk repair program, and new this year is a $500,000 budget towards multi-use pathway connections and pathway lighting. Next slide, please. 2024 budget also includes investments in a reimagination of downtown and the Byward Market. We've also put an emphasis on stimulating growth and tourism and are grateful for our partners in the community that help us attain our economic goals. The draft 2024 budget includes additional investments towards film office, Ottawa music industry, Ottawa nightlife, action plan, and Invest Ottawa. Next slide, please. Over the next month, leading up to the 2024 budget approval in December, the various committees will have an opportunity to discuss their respective budgets. In closing, I would like to take a moment to thank Suzanne with me here today, planning and budgeting team, broader financial services team, all city departments for their collaboration and commitment to the budget process. Members of council, residents for your engagement and dialogue throughout the process to date. The enhancements in the new budget products are a direct result of what we heard from you, and I'm confident that our budget is more digestible, consumable, and one of the most transparent municipal budgets. I look forward to the conversations today and as we lead up to the budget day on council December 6th. Mr. Mayor, that completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So we are going to have time for questions in a few minutes on the budget at a high level. But of course, we are tabling the budget today, and so only questions on the presentation are related to process and procedure will be in order today. Detailed questions and debate will occur at committee and at the December 6th council meeting. But we are going to move through a couple of other items, including the presentations from the Ottawa Police Services Board, Ottawa Public Library, and the Ottawa Board of Health. Just before we do that, we have the Committee of Adjustment report. So there's no presentation on that. So it's simply that City Council receive and table the Committee of Adjustment 2024 draft operating budget. Is that received and tabled? Yes? Okay. So with the support of council, we're going to change the order slightly of these three presentations and go with, for scheduling and logistic reasons, to go with the Ottawa Board of Health first, if that's all right with everyone. I'll hand it over to the Ottawa Board of Health and they will begin. And the chair of the Ottawa Board of Health, Councillor Kitts, is online.
Yes, hi.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, council colleagues and the senior leadership team. Appreciate your flexibility and wish I was joining you all in person. I have FOMO. I hope you have lots of snacks for a long day. So this morning, I'm joined by Dr. Vera Etches, our medical officer of health, who you all know, and by Kibria Mohammed, OPH's Manager of Business and Development Support Services, as we table the 2024 draft operating budget for the Ottawa Board of Health. Can we get the slides up on the screen? Wonderful, thank you. Ottawa Public Health has worked with the city's finance department to finalize its 2022 draft operating budget, which we are tabling here today. The proposed operating budget focuses on evidence related to population health needs and the past year's learning, OPH's strategic goals and mandates established by the Board of Health in June 2023, and provincial standards, and input from Ottawa community members, partners, and the OPH team. While dedicated provincial COVID-19 funding is coming to an end in 2024, and OPH has been steadily decreasing COVID-19 spending since the January 2022 peak of the to support agility, preparedness, and recovery that is prevention-oriented and population-focused. Next slide, please. This slide provides key highlights from the 2024 operating budget. First, we are tabling a balanced budget of $87.5 million. Deuxièmement, le budget soutient l'objectif de santé.
We would like also to focus on our objectives. We want to return to the breadth of public health practices.
In 2023 resulted in a significant reallocation of positions funded by the base budget to address ongoing areas of workload pressure, such as infection prevention and control and environmental health. Third, the budget is aligned with City Council's budget direction for 2024, a 2.5% tax-supported annual increase in municipal funding plus growth allocation, which will help to maintain OPH programs and services. Fourth, the budget is aligned with the August 2023 provincial announcement of restoring some base funding and an increase of 1% to our base. Fifth, we assume the province will offer the opportunity of one-time within-year funding to further support OPH programs and services. Next slide, please. This slide represents a high-level summary of the Board of Health's 2024 operating budget, with key changes from the 2023 approved operating budget. Pour 2024, le Conseil de santé présente.
For 2024, we will have a total gross budget of $87.5 million. This is a $80.7 million base budget for the programs and services provincially mandated. We will have a $6.8 million one-time budget to support COVID-19 immunization program wrap-up in the first trimester in Q1 2024.
$67 million is a cost-shared base budget, which is a cost shared between the province and the city, and $13.7 million is a base budget, 100% funded by either the city or the province. Out of 13.7 million, 100% funding, city funding is about 5.4 million, and the provincial funding is about 8.3 million. A total of 511.11 FTEs, a number that is unchanged from 2023, will remain funded by the base budget. The 2024 operating budget submission is 43.9 million lower than the 2023 approved operating budget, mainly due to the ending of dedicated COVID-19 operations by Q1 2024. Next slide, please. The draft operating budget is balanced by revenues that include 55.8 million from the province, 1.3 million from other sources, like inspection fees, and 28.2 million net revenue contribution from the City of Ottawa. La ville et la province ont augmenté leur
The city and the
financement.
province have increased their funding by $1.6 million, 1.1 for Ottawa and $500,000 from the province. This is to support the operating budget of OPH.
Next slide, please. So this concludes our presentation. Thank you, merci. We would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup. So I'll ask for the 2024 draft operating budget for the Ottawa Board of Health to be received and tabled. So received and tabled. Thank you.
Received.
We will go next to the Ottawa Police Services Board, please. I'd like to welcome Chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board, Dr. Gail Beck, Police Chief Stubbs, and Deputy Chief Bell. Welcome to all of you and good morning. Just turn on your microphone, please, Dr. Beck. Thanks. There we go.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Je suis ici aujourd'hui en compagnie du chef de
It's a real pleasure. I'm here with the Chief Staff and Deputy Chief Mr. Bell. We would like to present you the draft operating and capital budget for 2024. The budget is conform to the recommendation of the police services. We will have an increase of 2.5%. We'll have also an increase of 1.5% because of the growth of the revenues.
And Deputy Chief Steve Bell to present the draft 2024 Ottawa Police Service budget. The budget is in keeping with board direction to prepare a budget based on a 2.5% tax increase and an estimated 1.5% increase in taxes resulting from growth in assessment base. These estimates are also in line with City Council's recommended budget guidelines. I want to begin by reminding Council of the Police Board's main responsibility, and that is to ensure the provision of adequate and effective police services in the municipality. Je rappelle d'abord au Conseil la principale.
I would like to remember the Council that the main responsibility of the Committee of the Police Services is to offer policing service adequate and efficient police services.
Huge geography with a growing population. In addition, Ottawa is a capital city, and as we've seen, this results in additional and unique policing requirements that add further pressures to our police services. This is my first budget process as board chair, and I have spent the last few months doing a great deal of listening and learning. This included meeting with many community stakeholders as well as members of the service. The timing of this budget is opportune as the board is in the final stages of developing its strategic plan for the service. La vision, continue. The vision, areas of focus, and goals were all informed by extensive data collection and consultation that was implemented over this past summer. La vision, les priorités et les objectifs.
The vision, the objectives have been prepared, taking into account the data collected as well as engagement with different stakeholders during last summer.
It has also served as the backdrop for the draft budget you have before you today. The budget reflects what we have heard from the community members, including those who are also members of the police service. It prioritizes investments in areas that our community and police service members asked us to invest in. It also prioritizes resources in areas that we know we need to invest in to ensure adequate and effective policing. I will now turn things over to Chief Stubbs and Deputy Bell to elaborate further on what the draft budget includes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Beck. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, councillors. I am pleased to be here today with Chair Beck and Deputy Bell to present the Ottawa Police Service 2024 draft operating and capital budget, which has been a key priority within the OPS for the last few months. As the board chair mentioned, we are working with the Police Service Board to develop a new strategic plan. You'll see that we've taken what we've heard from the community, our members, and this council during the strategic plan consultations and implemented that feedback into the draft budget. The draft budget we're tabling today will ensure the OPS's continued ability to provide adequate and effective policing in the City of Ottawa while demonstrating the efficient use of police resources and taxpayer dollars. Having said this, the OPS is managing a number of significant challenges related to meeting demands from the community, such as increasing crime rates and calls for service. We are also managing more complex demonstrations and major events. And as we've discussed and presented, we need to hire more members to stabilize the service. The draft budget before you today balances the policing needs of the community with the fiscal reality of the board's direction. We look forward to discussing the budget with the board and the public throughout the consultation process. During community meetings and when meeting with councillors, we heard repeated requests to see more police in the city's neighborhoods to address general disturbances on the streets, the rise in thefts, and increase our traffic enforcement activities. Communities and councillors have also told us they want more focus on issues specific to their particular neighborhoods, with increased contact with the OPS and improved communication. It is our goal to meet those demands via our 3-year staffing stabilization strategy and the development of a district policing model, which we'll discuss in a moment. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Good. Yeah. Okay, I think the wrong slide deck is up there. Do you have the second one? Yeah. Okay. You know, we'll just continue with, I'm not sure who I'm looking at, maybe over there, but we'll just continue without the slides, I think is what we'll do. The next slide was going to be some key metrics and stats from the police service. Our total calls for service are rising year to date. We've received over 325,000 calls for service. That's an 18% rise compared to last year, which is a significant bump. Suspected overdose calls attended by police have tripled. Reported crime has risen by 8%. The volume of Criminal Code of Canada offences increased by 7.5%. There have been 13 homicide victims so far this year, with that involved 12 homicide incidents. There have been 63 shootings compared to 54 last year. And as we've reported a number of times, the total hate and bias incidents have increased significantly this year. One of the most common issues raised by councillors are traffic related, and we do see increased traffic complaints, collisions, and injuries. As well, we've seen a rise in our overtime budget of $17.4 million. Last year, we thought it was an anomaly with the convoy in February, but that number has sustained throughout this year. We are the 9th out of the 12 biggest services in Canada in regards to pop to cop ratio in Canada. Ottawa's population growth and urban and suburban sprawl are outpacing the OPS's growth. Our staffing levels cannot keep up with the growth, and we are experiencing staffing challenges. We feel that the 2024 OPS draft budget will begin to address many of the issues and concerns that the community has brought forward. This draft budget, as the chair mentioned, will align with the board direction of a 2.5% tax increase, as well as the board's directions, strategy, and community feedback. The highlights include year one of a 3-year staffing stabilization strategy that looks to hire 555 sworn and civilian staff over that time. As I mentioned earlier, we will transition to a new district model that will be more community policing focused and to ensure we are listening to the concerns of each ward. And I just want to mention, I really appreciate the time that most councillors gave during our meetings that were one-on-one. I learned a lot about your individual wards as well as the community during that time. And this is certainly something that we are going to focus on in regards to a more consistent communication strategy and plan with each councillor to make sure that we are focusing on the needs in your ward. Other highlights include a rollout of our digital evidence and information management system and our body-worn camera pilot. We are going to grow our cybercrime unit based on increasing demands and open a Byward Market Neighborhood Operations Center. We will continue to deliver on our facility strategic plan commitments, including the South facility. As well, we will continue to advance our equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives, which is highlighted by our Drive to strategy. We'll also continue to focus on the wellness of our members and internally ensuring we have a strong cybersecurity and business continuity program. Over to you, Deputy Bell.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll now outline some of the financials associated with this year's draft operating budget. The budget proposal aligns to the board's direction to prepare the 2024 draft operating and capital budgets based on the 2.5% tax levy and the prorated share of the 1.5% assessment growth. These directions resulted in a $13.4 million increase to the 2024 OPS budget, bringing the total net operating budget to $372.4 million. The $13.4 million represents 1.5% or $5 million in assessment growth and 2.5% or $8.4 million in police tax levy increase. This increase results in an estimated $17 increase on the average urban household, bringing the total 2024 policing cost to $697 per household per year. The breakdown of the $13.4 million 2024 draft operating budget increase is categorized in accordance with the City of Ottawa budget reporting requirements. We've allocated $13.3 million for investments needed to maintain services and to ensure continued delivery of adequate and effective policing services. $3.2 million is allocated to the 27-member growth supporting priorities and strategic direction for the Ottawa Police Service, including 7 sworn growth officers and 20 growth civilian positions to support both operations and the Police Service Board requirements. There is no new service growth in this year. OPS continues to be committed to seeking ways to reduce operating costs while achieving core objectives, and the 2024 budget aligns to the Mayor's efficiency exercise and includes $2.6 million in efficiencies. The user fee increases to the board's user fee policy and ensures that user fees grow at the same pace as other costs. I'll now highlight the breakdown of the 2024 gross operating budget. 83% of the budget is allocated to compensation, which includes costs of members moving through their salary steps, provisions of negotiated pay increases, and officer growth. 8% is allocated towards materials, supplies, and services, which include fuel for our fleets, uniform and safety supplies for members, maintenance for facilities and IT infrastructures, and required training and development, as well as professional services. 6% of the total budget is allocated to capital formation, which supports the life cycle and infrastructure-related costs for fleet, IT, and equipment-related costs to support the delivery of adequate and effective police service. And finally, 3% is attributed to the city-related support costs, such as program facility costs and other related support services where the Ottawa Police Service and the city are integrated in provision of services. Finally, I'll speak to our 2024 capital envelope that ensures assets such as fleet, facilities, and information technology are replaced as required. The $35.2 million budget is allocated based on two categories. First is the renewal of assets, which includes fleet, facility life cycle, information technology infrastructures, and the life cycle of other specialized assets. And finally, strategic initiatives, including the South facility, which it makes up the majority of this category, growth in other and facilities and security initiatives in other areas. And with that, I will turn it over to the chair for closing comments.
En terminant, je rappelle aux membres du Conseil
I would like to remember every member of council that you will have the opportunity to comment our preliminary budget. Today, we will have a public survey.
of the additional opportunities there are to provide feedback on the draft police budget. Today, we are opening a public survey. If you are subscribed to the OPS media list, you will be receiving a media release containing a link to complete the survey. Please take the time to complete it and also to share it with your constituents. Veuillez prendre le temps d'y répondre et de parler.
Please take some time to fill up the survey and to circulate it amongst your elector.
In addition, we have a meeting of our Finance and Audit Committee on Friday, November 17 at 9 a.m., where we will be welcoming public delegations, including any members of council who would like to register to speak. De plus, nous aurons une réunion avec notre comité de finances et de la vérification.
We'll have a meeting with the Finance and Auditing Committee on Friday, November 17 at 9. And the public will be welcome, and any member of council that would like to speak.
The board will deliberate and vote on the deadline to register for the delegations is Monday, November 13 at 5 p.m. And we will require a written copy of the comments you intend to present at the time of registration. The board will deliberate and vote on the draft budget at its regular public meeting on November 27. Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Miigwech.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll open it up to questions now. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by saying thank you very much to Dr. Beck. The decision by council to make the chair of the Police Services Board not a council member, I think is showing us now why that was done. The number of hours that Dr. Beck has been out talking to members of the community and all of our various groups that we traditionally talk to, and then many others, other groups that we maybe don't talk to so much, Dr. Beck has spent many more hours than I think we would even have predicted a chair of a Police Services Board would spend. And I want to make sure that's clear to everybody here who we hear it on Police Services Board. We know how much she is out in the community talking to people, but maybe councillors are not aware. And that has resulted in extensive consultation much prior to this budget. So often people criticize budgets as being something that's just presented in the moment. This has been built over months and months with extensive consultation. So I first want to thank Dr. Beck, who has for sure spent many more hours than we would have predicted at this job. She's respected in every community in the city, I think, the healthcare community, the university and colleges community, and she can add police services and the city as a whole to that list. So thank you very much, Dr. Beck, first and foremost. And secondly, I'd like to thank the chief, who has done exactly the same thing and has visited, as you know, so many of your wards, for all of you who were willing to meet, And that also resulted in consultation that is real when you hear from individual people on the street at their homes what matters to people. So that type of consultation prior to a budget being presented is worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. So I really want to thank both leaders, and as a general comment, it shows how much leadership matters. So I will say that, and I will say that our other consultations on the strategic planning process for the Ottawa Police Services Board have also fed into this. And what I see in front of us, and there will be detailed questions for sure, is a real reflection of what was heard for over many, many months. So thank you to everybody, and those are my overall comments.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Conseillère Plante?
Oui, si vous me permettez, je voulais juste, if I may, I won't have time to attend the budget consultation, but I just wanted to emphasize the efforts of the police officers in my ward, especially Sergeant Plummer. We had a very serious situation with road safety. He was very patient with the parents. He attended a meeting, and it's things like that that really help the people in the ward. I have a lot of security safety issues, but this was a very sensitive case in particular, so I wanted to emphasize all the efforts made by the police board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Beck. Thank you, Chief Stubbs, for listening. My ward, as you know, hosted about 200 or so local residents at the Stonebridge Golf Course last month. They were very concerned. They were concerned about the stunt racing, about the increasing vehicle thefts. They were concerned about the staggering number of break-ins that had happened over a short period of time, and just the general lack of police presence that they perceived in the community. And I can tell you it was extremely well received. The next day, I had the opportunity to participate in a ride-along, both a day and night. And in that one 12-hour period, we had uniformed members that were going to the Ottawa Hospital to deal with the fire. We had a stolen vehicle with a 10-year-old girl in the back seat that was safely recovered. We had vehicles that went off the road. First aid was dispatched. And I just want to say thank you very much for all that you've done. And I can assure you that what I've just heard from this police budget, it addresses much of the concerns that my community have about the police presence. Certainly the South facility and the concept of having the district model, I think, will address a number of those things. My biggest concern remains the number of Ottawa police operations that directly relate to federal activities, such as the demonstrations, the protests, diplomatic engagements. And I'm interested to hear as we go forward in the budget process how we're looking at addressing that issue. But I do want to reinforce the message that I've heard from my council colleagues, just to say thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Dr. Beck and Chief and Deputy Chief for the presentation. I appreciate the invite to the Finance and Audit Committee meeting and your board meeting at the end of the month. I'd like to have a bit more understanding of the public survey, Dr. Beck, that you referenced. How is the data from that survey going to inform both the committee and board before they make a decision?
I may leave it to either the chief or deputy to provide more information, but I think that the board is really committed to collecting as much data as it possibly can from the public about the areas of the priorities in the budget and how that funding should be spent. We're conscious that it is a time of restraint, and so we're making sure that we conform to what City Council has asked, a 2.5 and 1.5. So we're hoping that that data tells us whether or not we're in the right direction, and we hope as many people as possible do participate, because the more data we have, sir, the better.
What I'm looking for as someone who will be asked to approve your budget or not a month from now is to see a link between the public need that is addressed and reflection in the actual budget. Same thing with my ward. I have basic requests for police service. I need to see reflected in the budget. If I don't see it reflected, I don't support the budget. So if you're going through the extent of a public survey, and you're asking people to reflect on the draft budget that is before you, what I'm looking for over the next month is evidence that those needs that the public identify are reflected in the budget. So I look forward to participating in the process over the next month, but wanted to say that there's some basic needs in my ward that must be addressed in this budget for me to support it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Desroches.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the chief and to the chair of the Police Services Board for your presentation. Just very quickly, I agree with Councillor Curry's comments in terms of the new approach, and would like to see some progress of many of the priorities that you're seeing. I thank you, Chief, for the time spent visiting Riverside South and Finley Creek and speaking to the residents and hearing and businesses and hearing firsthand some of the concerns. One of which is car thefts, and came up last night at the Finley Creek AGM. And perhaps when you come to us again, you can talk to that in terms of the work you're doing and whether the city police force will be getting access to funding from the provincial government, which recently announced a few months ago that they were, I think, going to expand some of the funding and collaborative efforts across Ontario, since it is a province-wide problem. So no answer today, but if at the next meeting on this subject, if you could discuss that and potential application to that program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Desroches. Councillor Troster.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to follow up on some questions we asked about last year, namely this issue of large demonstrations in Ottawa that are targeted at the federal government, as we saw with a convoy. And the fact that when our neighborhood resource teams are pulled off to help with those demonstrations, you know, it often drains some of the officers out of our neighborhoods that maybe know our community better. So I'm just wondering if there's been any progress on negotiations with the federal government about funding for that kind of policing.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Certainly, it is an issue that we've talked about, I would say, for the most of 2023. We have continued discussions with the federal government in this regard. Unfortunately, I'm just not in a position to talk significantly about that, as certain processes are underway. So I'm just limited. But however, we do recognize that issue of pulling, you know, the proactive resources that we do have are primarily our neighborhood response teams and our traffic teams. And those are two key areas to help address a lot of the issues within your particular wards. So it is our desire to try to free them up and have them focused on their particular mandates more often than not.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for being here, and I appreciate all the work that you've been doing in the South for all four wards that are down there. Question about the hiring. I know I imagine this is going to be an ongoing topic over the next number of years. Has there been any form of discussion or negotiations? I'm not sure what needs to happen to ensure that there are enough police college spaces for recruits from Ottawa, so that we're not kind of squeezed out by the larger markets.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. The Ottawa Police College, via the provincial government, has expanded their operational capacity. Historically, they do 3 classes a year. They've expanded that to 4 classes. And not only that, the individual classes have risen to over 500. So they expect to put through over 2,000 police recruits through the OPC in 2024. We recently have completed a survey, a needs assessment survey for the Ottawa Police Service, the Ontario Police College, and we have submitted what we believe our needs are for the next coming years. And in fact, we should receive the allocated seat for the Ottawa Police Service in the coming week or two. So we'll have full view of what our allotment will be in 2024.
And the way this relates to budget is so in cases where we let's say can't achieve the 25 this year, right? Let's say we can't achieve that. Those vacancies, I assume, just get carried over, and next year we'll have to hire whatever number next year plus whatever
is left over this year, correct? And the money you just carry over as well.
Councillor, you're in regards to our inability to fill the seats if we have them, or if they're not available. I'm just maybe I missed the nuance of your question.
Yeah, that's probably my fault for wording it weirdly. It relates to the police college question, right? So if there are not enough spaces for our recruits and we only manage to fill 20, let's say, of 25 vacancies this year, those 5 spots get carried over along with the allotted money, I assume.
You know what? It would reset every year with the with the Ontario Police College. They're going to have their seat allotments every year, and there's sort of no carryover with them. Generally, they try to be equitable, sort of each year and each session. And then sometimes there's some priorities. Obviously, the Ontario the provincial police force has some priority there as well too. So it's a bit of a moving target every year, unfortunately. But they are trying to kind of rework their business processes so it is more consistent, and we have visibility for all of 2024, which hasn't been the case in the past. It's sort of you find out what your allotment is very close to the class date. So this is going to be very good for us to clearly understand what our recruiting team needs to do.
Excellent. That sounds very, very beneficial to planning. Thanks very much, and looking forward to tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. So is the 2024 draft operating and capital budget for the Police Services Board received and tabled?
Received.
Thank you. Let's move to the Ottawa Public Library 2024 draft budget estimates, and we're joined by Sonia Bebbington, the Chief Librarian and CEO. And I will hand it off now to the Chair of the Board, Councillor Luloff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Wait for the presentation to be put up.
I'm very happy to be here this morning to present the 2024 draft budget. This morning, we have the honor to present.
Built within the direction provided by Ottawa City Council, the draft 2024 budget is financially prudent, responsive to current pressures, and simultaneously provides for future needs. On that note, with Adisoke on the horizon, the OPL is headed into a period of change unlike any the system has known, including during the difficult time of amalgamation. And so this budget respects the direction provided by the city and also reflects the growth this board has approved, and does so in a responsible, incremental fashion, developed in collaboration with our partners at City Finance. In addition to addressing some current pressures already identified to the board, we are proud to propose this responsible and reliable path to meet the exciting opportunities of the future. Next slide, please. Public libraries in Ontario are required to provide residents access to borrowing materials and information services free of charge. Yet we know, and OPL has demonstrated, that libraries do so much more than this. The quote that you can see on the slide here is taken from the Overdue report. That's the title of the report, not the timing that it was released, which explains how investment in public libraries is critical to Canada's post-pandemic recovery, long-term competitiveness, and community resilience. The Ottawa Public Library has the honor and responsibility of fulfilling this role for residents of Ottawa, and staff are committed to building community and transforming lives. This is done every single day as our incredible employees live the OPL mission to inspire learning, spark curiosity, and connect people. Serving the national capital city of more than 1 million residents, OPL is the largest bilingual public library system in North America, offering access to information and services through 33 physical branches, a robust virtual channel, 3 bookmobiles, and a home delivery service for clients unable to visit in person. and an automated lending library service at one location. Next slide, please. Building on the work initiated in the 2023 budget, the OPL 2024 draft budget supports next steps emanating from the approval of the frameworks identifying core facility and service guidelines and pathways into the future. It supports the 2023 to 2028 OPL strategic directions and priorities and aligns with the 2023 to 2026 term of council priorities at the city, while also addressing mandatory operating pressures that will help ensure the library services remain a vital part of the ecosystem of learning and literacy for the citizens of Ottawa. The budget accomplishes all of this within city directions and is a model for the coming years as we take a sustainable path to expansion. I'll now turn it over to our Chief Librarian and CEO for the remainder of the presentation, and would like to congratulate her on completing her first year, celebrating her first anniversary as our Chief Librarian and CEO on the 31st of October this year. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, members of Council, thank you for having me here today. As the Chair has outlined, we'll go to the next slide, please. That our proposed budget respects the directed increase of 2.5% on the tax levy portion, representing a total increase of $2.37 million. Donc, le budget pour l'année 2024 vous présente une augmentation budgétaire de 2.
So we have a budget increase of $2.37 million. As you can see, this number is in line with the guidelines given by the Council.
En plus de ces importantes initiatives sur le plan des services, notre budget prévoit l'amélioration ou le remplacement des actifs principaux qui serviront à la
Our service is for service delivery. We will continue to build the future of the library network in Ottawa. Actually, the budget includes money for the Barhavel library and funding to support operation at the main library at Disoke.
An overall view of the library's proposed 2024 budget shows that the board has kept within the directed range from council with a total increase of $2.37 million. This would see the overall city-funded portion of the budget increase to $61.115 in 2024. Next slide, please. Encore à l'écran, vous voyez le survol du budget proposé.
You can see here what is proposed for 2024.
The library has an annual revenue expectation of $1.7 million. Of that, nearly $1.4 million is provided by the province of Ontario through the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture through the Public Library Operating Grant. The balance of expected revenues are from short-term rentals for meeting rooms, photocopying, library material replacement charges, and expired holds. The library is expecting revenues to hold steady for next year. Additional expenditures in facility systems lifecycle and accessibility improvements at a number of locations will increase the total city investment in the library to $63.62 million, as noted at the bottom of the 2024 column. If the 2024 budget is approved as presented, the City of Ottawa contributions therefore represent 97.25% of OPL's total funding. Next slide, please. In this slide, the proposed 2024 budget is summarized by category, starting with financial adjustments totaling $210,000. Mandatory items are the second priority to ensure that basic components of the operating budget are adequately funded. Cost of living adjustments for OPL employees and amount for the library's share of facility services, employee compensation, and materials are included. These total $1.37 million.
And for the third time in as many years, internal efficiencies has offset any need for licensing and maintenance funding requests resulting from increased contractual costs. The majority of these efficiencies have been found in technology-related areas. Next slide, please. From there, we move to the strategic items, ou les dépenses stratégiques. In 2024, OPL's primary budgetary pressure focuses on the future resource requirements related to the central branch at Atisoke. In 2023, OPL initiated an incremental approach to funding future HR requirements, with intentions to fund additional positions over 4 years. In 2023, the majority of the positions requested were permanent positions for the new branch to be used in the interim to meet other needs. Turning to 2024, the draft budget addresses these future requirements in 2 separate line items. First, staff are recommending that funding be used to create 8 new full-time equivalent positions, specifically related to new services offered at the central branch. While the facility is not set to open until 2026, these positions will be initiated in 2024, allowing time not only to complete the staffing process, but allow time for planning these new or significantly expanded service offerings made possible by the new facility. These additional resources are detailed in the next slide and account for $870,000 of the request. Secondly, an additional $850,000 will be required for operational pressures related to future development of the central branch. For flexibility, this investment in the future was estimated at a mid-range pay band representing 10 full-time equivalents. After further refinement, the actual number of new positions may vary based on compensation levels. These positions will be required to support traditional and new services with a much larger central branch becomes operational. Staff are thus recommending that $850,000 be transferred and held in the reserve as a way to save for these future required resources. In 2026, these funds will be reversed as part of financial adjustments we make at the beginning of the cycle. We see this as a prudent and responsible approach to managing upcoming financial pressures, and we are supported in this approach by our partners at City Finance. Finally, staff are seeking additional funding to reflect the actual cost for the increase in Sunday hours that was implemented in 2022, as well as to add mobile security services to as many as 4 additional branches in keeping with recommendations made to the board in June of this year. Next slide, please. Let's turn now to the new positions for 2024. The new central branch at Atisoke will offer both traditional and new services to clients across the city. Many of the new service offerings are designed to elevate OPL's client experience, and staff are thus requesting 8 new FTEs be added permanently to our complement. Of these, 6 are proposed to be used in a permanent capacity, starting work in 2024, to establish program offerings in a variety of areas prior to the facility's opening. These represent new services or significant expansions to current services which need to be ramped up well before opening. We wish to ensure that as we open a world-class facility, our new and expanded services match. 2 positions are requested to be used in a temporary capacity until such time as they are required for branch operations at the central branch at Atisoke. And those are the last 2 that you see on the list there. Next slide, please. The programs and events that will be offered at the central branch need to be high caliber and aligned with our spaces and with increasing expectations, all of which was based on extensive consultation with the community as the design for Atisoke was determined. To achieve these goals at the central branch and aligned programs across the system, staff are requesting the addition of 3 new FTE to the program development team, 2 librarians and 1 coordinator. In consideration of current security-related demands, staff are requesting funding for a temporary full-time security advisor to lead the development of all security protocols at the new central branch and to refine those used across the library system. Finally, at the direction of the board earlier this year, the coordination of a peer support network in support of internal employees will be explored and piloted in 2024. Next slide, please. Moving to the capital overview. Within the $61.115 million budget total, staff recommend a 2024 OPL funded capital program of $1.56 million. Leveraging development charges and including city allocated capital funding for libraries of 3.72 increases, the total capital program supporting libraries to $5.28 million. The vast majority of the OPL funded capital projects in 2024 are directed towards the renewal of city assets, detailed on the slide here. Next slide. In the growth category, using both OPL funding and development charges and following board direction for the approved Barrhaven project, we are proposing an allocation of a total of $1.5 million to that initiative in 2024. With this investment, more than 50% of the OPL city portion required for the project will be met. Next slide, please. Finally, the budget includes recommended increases to meeting room rental rates at 2.5%, material price adjustments, which are in line with our policy supporting cost recovery and reflect increases indicated in the Consumer Price Index. And our complete list of user fees can be found in the budget book, along with the four-year capital forecast for information purposes. Next slide, please. I want to thank you all for your attention. As you can see, OPL has worked hard to develop a budget that is within the council-directed range, fulfills our mandatory requirements and maintains current operations, fulfills maintenance obligations, finds internal efficiencies. Next slide, please. Ça améliore aussi l'expérience du client. Ça répond aux besoins actuels et futurs en matière.
Meets the current and future needs of staffing, and it revises user fees in a manner that is equitable and in accordance with cost recovery principles.
Back to the chair. Thank you very much for your attention.
As you can see, we have worked very hard to ensure that we are delivering on Council's priorities, remaining financially prudent, and delivering on-board policy moving forward. We would be happy to take any technical questions that Council may have.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Thank you to the OPL team. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair, and Madam CEO for your presentation. Can you just confirm that last night your board met and you presented the draft budget to the board? Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay. And as you know, my community is very engaged and interested in OPL matters. Is there a recording or something that I can share with my community so they can see the draft presentation that was presented to your board?
We don't have recordings of the meetings available. The minutes will be available, but the presentation, the version of the presentation that was prepared for board can certainly be shared.
Okay, very well. So at the next board meeting where the budget will be considered by your board, will you go straight into debate and discussion, or will there be another presentation for the public who comes to this meeting?
We'll initiate with a presentation to talk about any recommended changes or differences that staff might be bringing forward. But of course, there will be time for delegations.
Very good. Thank you. And to confirm again, Council approved a budget direction of up to 2.5%, which I think included the library. Is your budget incorporating a 2.5% increase, or did you incorporate something less than that?
We've used the full amount.
2.5, okay. And I know when I served on the board, Mayor, there were a number of years where there were surpluses generated, significant surpluses, much larger than any year in history. What are you projecting in 2023, this fiscal year?
Our current calculations are around $600,000. That's based on calculations made in June of this year.
Okay, so I'll be following up later, just given the record surpluses that the library's been producing, why they felt they needed to use 2.5% in this year's budget. So thank you.
I will note that over the course of the last year, the library has been very prudent in ensuring that we're paying down debt on Adasoke and the historic highs that the councillor is referring to certainly do not exist as they did perhaps in the past. That we've been very prudent with the use of our reserves and ensuring that we are using this responsibly to pay down our debt to the city on Adasoke.
Thank you. Conseillère Plante?
Merci beaucoup. Merci pour la présentation.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We're actually very lucky to have two wonderful branches. Can you give us a summary of the security question lately, especially downtown? I think it's important that the population has been made aware. Thank you for the question. We made a presentation in June. We had some security incidents because there are different factors throughout the city.
Last free public indoor spaces. And so all of the challenges that we see outdoors are sometimes reflected indoors. There is a concentration of issues in the core if we look at the data from our incident reports, but it's not limited to the core. And so some of the kinds of incidents that we have are disturbances, sometimes illegal activity like drug use. So those are a couple of examples. I don't have the numbers before me on the rates of those examples. What we're proposing here is an expansion to security services to maintain what we have currently at Main and Rideau, and to add a mobile service for up to 4 additional branches that are also experiencing some of these challenges.
Merci.
Councillor Menard?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for your work and the collaboration that you've shown every time we reach out. You always respond, and we always have good discussions about service. And to that end, I just wanted to say thank you for expanding the service back to, well, I guess returning to pre-pandemic service at branches, as well as expanding some service on Sundays to several branches. That is, I think, has been really appreciated by residents. I know we've had lots of discussions about that Sunday service and how we can get it to more branches, and just wanted to say appreciate that work and collaboration we've had to yourself and the chair. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We've we want to thank this council, especially for being such good supporters of the Ottawa Public Library. I know that many of you are users. There's no better time than today, once this meeting is over, if it doesn't go too long into the evening, to becoming a member of the Ottawa Public Library, becoming a customer of the Ottawa Public Library, a patron. We appreciate very much the support that this council gives us, and we look forward to a bright 2024.
Okay, thank you. So is the 2024 draft Ottawa Public Library Board operating and capital budget received and tabled? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move back to the budget itself. If there are high-level questions for staff about the budget or about process, Councillor Leeper.
Thanks, Mayor. It looks like the service review was fruitful. I'm wondering if in the budget documents that were going to be provided, those are set out very clearly. What adjustments have been made on the basis of reinvestment of dollars from one program area to another.
Mr. Mayor, yes, that's something that we can present during that respective committee presentation for that budget.
Is it possible to get that before we go into the committee process?
Mr. Mayor, I'll try my best. It is a pretty tight timeline between now. I mean, obviously, the Transit Commission is Tuesday. Transportation is Thursday next week. So the two biggest service review impact committees are upon us after a very onerous few days ahead of us. So I'll do my best and see what I can provide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Then is the 2024 draft operating and capital budget received and tabled. And we're referring the relevant portions of the 2024 operating and capital budgets to each standing committee of council and the Transit Commission. Is that carried? All right. We'll move to item 16.1 on the agenda, Finance and Corporate Services Department, 2024 Fleet Vehicle and Equipment Plans, information supplemental to the budget estimates. Is that received? Item 16.2, 2023 FTE Analysis Report, information supplemental to the budget estimates. Is that received? Okay, we'll move to item 21 on the agenda. There are no in-camera items. Disposition of items approved by committees under delegated authority. Is that received? Motion to adopt reports. Councillor Kavanagh.
That the report from the Director of Fleet Services entitled 2024 Fleet Vehicle and Equipment Plans, information supplemental to the budget estimates, the report from the Director of Human Resources entitled FTE Analysis Report, information supplemental to the budget estimates, Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee Report 8, Committee Services Committee Report 6, Finance and Corporate Services Committee Report 9, and the Planning and Housing Committee Report 17 be received and adopted as amended.
Is that carried?
Carried.
Motions of which notice has previously been given. Motion from Councillor Menard regarding the Council Sponsors Group for Climate Change, and I understand that's been amended to include the names of the recommended appointees.
Yes, thanks very much, Mayor. I'll just read that therefore be it resolved that the Climate Change Councillor Sponsors Group be established with up to 5 members. With representation from the inner and outer urban, suburban, and rural areas, as well as the general manager, planning, real estate, economic development, or a designate, and other staff as required. Be it further resolved that the following members of council be appointed to the Climate Change Council Sponsors Group: Councillor Sean Menard, Councillor Marty Carr, Councillor David Hill, Councillor Teresa Kavanagh, and Councillor David Brown.
All right, is that carried?
Carried.
Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. I believe there are none. Notices of motion. Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas upon approval of the city's new official plan in October 2021, Council approved a reduction in the proposed height limit within minor corridors to a consistent 4 stories in all minor corridors. And whereas the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing approved the city's official plan in November 2022 with several adjustments, including revising minor corridor permissible heights as follows: downtown minor corridors from 4 to 9 stories, inner urban minor corridors from 4 to 6 stories, outer urban minor corridors from 4 to 6 stories, suburban minor corridors from 4 to 7 stories. And whereas the provincially approved height limits were consistent with staff recommendations at the time council was considering the new official plan, and whereas under council direction, staff have been rapidly advancing the development of a new comprehensive zoning bylaw that implements the approved official plan. And whereas reverting back to the 2021 approved height limits would create a delay in the zoning bylaw development, as well as impact applications which were already submitted since the ministry approval of the official plan. And whereas the council approved municipal housing pledge, as well as the city's application to the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation Housing Accelerator Fund rely on increased opportunities to create housing units throughout the city. And whereas as part of implementing the city's new official plan through the development of a new comprehensive zoning bylaw, it is believed that a Made in Ottawa solution could lead to higher densities across the city in a more balanced approach than designating 4 units as of right citywide. And whereas the infrastructure master plan recommendations will include an infrastructure capacity management program to ensure adequate capacity in existing local pipe systems to support citywide intensification proposals. Therefore, be it resolved that council requests that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing retain the minor corridor permissible heights in accordance with the November 2022 ministry approval of the city's new official plan.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Are there any other notices of motion? Motion to introduce bylaws, Councillor Kavanagh.
Que le règlement énuméré à l'ordre du jour.
That the bylaw listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings, be read and passed.
Is that carried? Confirmation bylaw, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Que le règlement suivant soit lu et
That the
adopté
following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting of November 8, 2023.
Is that carried?
Adopté?
There are no inquiries that I'm
Il n'y a
aware
pas de
of.
demande de renseignement, à ce que je sache.
Adjourn, Councillor Kavanaugh.
that the proceedings of the regular city council meeting of November 8th, 2023 be adjourned.
Is that carried? Thank you, everyone. We will resume at approximately 1 o'clock for our special meeting. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
And then some carbs to go along with that. We have gluten-free and gluten-full as well. And people can choose their breads to take home. And then often people will come as a group. So family members
feel like I'm further back than I normally am. But, yeah. Keep your distance, everyone.
Good afternoon. Bonjour à tous. My name is Kendra Titley and I will be your moderator. Je m'appelle Kendra Titley et je serai l'animatrice de ce point de presse. I will now invite each agency in reverse alphabetical order to ask questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique inverse, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. We'll now start with, nous allons commencer par Frédéric Pépin, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur le maire. Ça s'est bien passé aujourd'hui, c'est rapide. Expliquez-nous un peu, les gens à la maison doivent se serrer la ceinture financièrement, c'est difficile, vous
So do
l'avez
you
dit.
have actually to, so you were able to find a generous budget. So how were you able to find some savings? Where were you able to find the money? So you talked about savings today. So how were you able to actually present a budget today? There was a lot of hard work behind the scene. We've done that over the past few months. We've worked hard with the teams within the city of Ottawa. At the same time, you can see we've increased the taxes by 2.5% as per my campaign. We also have revenues from other sources. So these revenues are also increasing. We also worked on efficiencies. And we're trying to find a way not to impact resident services. We're investing a lot in transit. We're also investing to offer more services and support in community services and for the vulnerable population. Everything is aligned with our priorities. You did mention earlier, you don't want to ask again money to the other two levels of government. When do you know that you will be receiving money from the provincial and the federal? Because you have many files. Discussions are ongoing. I spent a lot of time. I talked to the other two levels of government. This week, I was able to talk to Premier Ford. I talked also to 3 or 4 of his ministers. I also had a discussion with the federal offices, the federal departments, such as I had a discussion yesterday also. So all ongoing discussions. I hope that our partners will be there for us. There's no other way to invest in affordable housing, in support for the most vulnerable populations without our partners. Thank you.
The Ottawa Citizen.
Hi, Blair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned in your remarks that I think it's $27 million in efficiencies you found at City Hall. I wonder if it can be elaborate on that. Were there job losses involved with that, or just explain a bit about where that money was found?
So it's a process that I'll let Cyril speak to it a little more in detail. But this is a process that we began, and I promised during the election campaign last year to conduct a thorough review of the city budget, and we initiated a service review working group with Councillor Carr and Councillor Curry, and we've met on a regular basis with city staff over the course of many months now to go department by department, hear presentations from departments, speak to some of the boards and other organizations that are part of the city budget, and just try to find ways to save money. So we've looked at fleet vehicles, and there was the route optimization that happened at OC Transpo and a number of other different initiatives that we've identified to save money without impacting on services for residents. And I'm very proud of the fact that already we've identified $27 million in savings. That's the equivalent of, I think, something in the range of 1.3% in terms of a tax increase. So without those savings, the tax increase would be 3.8% instead of 2.5. So it's a big difference for the residents of Ottawa. And we're going to continue this work in the months ahead because we're not done yet. And every time we find savings, that will impact potentially next year's budget, the 2025 budget, the 2026 budget, and beyond. But maybe Cyril can expand a bit on where some of the savings were found.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to go into some more examples, like I cited in the presentation, when I look at fleet as an example, just over $6 million worth of savings, some of the significant things we're doing there in that service delivery is I spoke to the refurbishment program. So our large graders that we use on our snow operations, typically we would have those for 12 years, around 12,000 engine hours. They're big diesel engines. And then we would replace those. Typically they run around $750,000 to replace. What we're doing is we're leveraging a local supplier that does a complete refurbishment. So they basically come in and, tear it down to the ground and build it back up. And we save about $300,000 on that one vehicle each time we do a refurbishment. And then we get another 12 years out of that vehicle. Another example within fleet operation is looking at our resources. So we have a 24/7 operation where the different resources are needed at different times. So we're looking at a pooled fleet and vehicle type program where we look at the low usage vehicles in off-peak hours, maybe leverage those vehicles somewhere else. We're looking at standardizing our fleet units. So as opposed to having a many different number of units, we got to carry all the different inventory parts, kind of reducing the parts inventory as an example. Also looking at, what vehicle is our service delivery using today? And quite frankly and simple, if you're driving an F-150 pickup truck today, can you move into a smaller electric vehicle that you still meets the needs of your operation and still be more efficient at a cheaper version? So that's a very detailed of our reforming the fleet operation as an example. Each of the committees that will come forward will articulate each of those service reviews and show that, there's no impacts to the service other than being more effective and efficient.
Okay. Second question, this is about transit. You talked about the 30% loss of passenger traffic, passenger revenue, the lack of support from the provincial government and perhaps federal government as well, and the route changes that have occurred. And I find it hard to believe that the level of transit service is really as good as you're saying it is, I suppose.
I don't think I commented on the performance of the service. I think you talked about the importance of public transit and making it a priority, but I'm wondering if riders would agree with you on that. So we're spending more on public transit in 2024 than we've ever spent before as a city, just in the operating budget. And then on top of that, we're continuing to make investments in electric buses and in the light rail system. So we're spending historic amounts of money on public transit. It's a vital service. But I think that people of Ottawa understand that riders are not traveling to the same places that they used to go. There's not that same sort of trip downtown and back that people used to do in the morning and in the afternoon rush hour. So the travel patterns are different and the service has to change and adapt to that. And if we're down in terms of ridership by 30%, then we have to make tough decisions about where we're investing our money. What we heard from our residents over and over again is they want reliability. So what we've done in the past, I think in some cases, we've probably overextended ourselves a little bit and we've offered more service than we could provide. And that's led to canceled buses and that sort of thing. People want reliable service. They want to know that when there's supposed to be a bus at their corner at a certain time, that it's there. So we're moving towards reliability, which means increasing our investment in many areas and decreasing our investment in some of the areas where the service isn't in demand as much. So that's something that OC Transpo has always done. And of course, it means that we're taking money from one area and reallocating it to another, but we're doing that within a budget that's growing and expanding. We've never spent more on public transit than we will next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. On va maintenant à Julien Paquette à la 3.
Bonjour. Est-ce que c'est possible d'avoir une mise à jour sur
Can we have an update on the OC transport deficit, what are you expecting for this year? Do you have any idea? How much would it be?
Cyril, do you have a sense of
Yes, we do.
what the gap might be on the transit budget? Yeah, so are you asking pour 2023 ou 2024?
Are you asking for 2023 or 2024? 2023.
Transit budget. Yeah, so in our Q2 report, which we reported back in September, we did report the deficit of approximately $40 million. What you're going to see through the budget process, we're going to provide an update next week at Transit Commission in terms of where that currently resides and the strategies that we're going to have in place to close that gap for 2023.
Et Monsieur le maire, j'aimerais vous entendre un peu aussi sur
Mayor
vos-
Sutcliffe, can you explain a little bit of your priority for the future? People are staying more on the outskirts. They're not going downtown. They're not doing it on a regular basis. What will be the future of the transit system? Maybe this question should be addressed to René Amilcar. She has much more information about the different routes. But I've heard often that when people that are living in Barrhaven or Kanata and they're working at Amazon or they are students at the Algonquin College, there's not enough buses for them. Passengers are going through our city. I mean, people are going through our city at different hours and are going to different destinations. This is very different than the pre-pandemic situation. We have to adapt the routes, improve them, but at the same time, we have to improve the reliability of the transit service. We have higher demands in some areas, and they're really requesting, the residents are really requesting an increased reliability. When they're leaving their house, they want to make sure that the buses will be on the corner when they need it.
Thank you. We'll go to Leah Laraque at CTV.
Leah Laraque,
I think this is actually a question for Cyril. I'm just looking for some clarity in terms of the capital projects like the library, the OPS South facility that's breaking ground tomorrow. These are big, expensive projects. So how does that spending affect the tax bill? And if you can just...
So both of those projects they have a larger funding components from development charges. And those are budgets that would have been approved in previous years. So before we actually put a shovel in the ground, we need to approve the budget so they can proceed to tender. So both of those projects have been funded in prior year budgets. And again, specifically for the South facility, largely due to growth. So it's a big component that is funded through development charges. Ottawa Police Services does have an Ottawa Police tax levy. So they do issue debt as well. And they use their existing budget to fund the debt servicing and mortgage on that facility, much like OPL.
And my second question is perhaps for Ms. Stephenson and the mayor. Former city manager Steve Kanalaka said the city was under financial pressure. There was a lot of debt for the city and financial pressure. So by keeping taxes at 2.5%, are we pushing the overall financial situation and problems with our city down the line for in a couple of years to address?
I'll wait till you're
whenever.
good. Okay. We're fortunate that the costs at the City of Ottawa are not rising at the rate of consumer inflation. So we talked about this last year during the budget process. We have collective agreements with our major unions that continue through 2024. And typically those are at 2% or less in terms of wage increases, and wages make up more than 50% or roughly 50% of our total expenditures at the city. We also have growth. We've been lucky in the past 2 years that growth has been above normal levels compared to in the past.
And so we have lots of options. We've also just undertaken, as I discussed before, this service review where we found the equivalent savings of a roughly 1.3% tax increase. So we're doing everything we can to manage our money wisely and to make sure that before we ask the taxpayers of Ottawa to put more money in, that we're looking for savings internally. And we're doing that in a way that doesn't impact the programs and services that they rely on. But we are trying to find savings so we're not putting the burden on taxpayers at a time when affordability is a huge issue for residents, especially residents on fixed income, seniors and others whose incomes are not going up year over year. And we don't want to add to their burden with high property tax increases. So this is the responsible way forward. It's not exposing us to any significant risk. It's not creating a burden for future generations. It's a responsible way of managing our finances.
Thank you. We'll go to Arthur White-Crummy at CBC Radio.
Oh, that's not a camera. I just wanted to start with a number of technical points for Ciro, I believe. There were just a number of statements that came up in some of the presentations and from the mayor's presentation that just didn't jive with what I saw in the budget book. It's probably since I've just had a chance to peruse it very early, but I just wanted to pin some things down. So the presentation mentioned that the savings and cost efficiencies, I think, were somewhere around 26 million, though it seemed to be more in the report that I saw, well over that. Like, it seemed to include some OC Transpo stuff that brought it above 55 million. So I wanted to start with that. Also, the new revenues, I think that we heard from the mayor that it was about 220 million. It seemed to be less in the report. So I just wanted to pin that down. And last of all, the housing money, I think that the mayor said somewhere around 200 million, but it just seemed to be less in your presentation. So if you could just clarify all those things, that'd be great.
Sure. I'll start at the back and correct me if I forget the first ones. So from a housing perspective, so the housing budget is in two components. One component goes to the Community Social Services Committee, and the other component goes to the Planning and Housing Committee. If you refer to each of those respective budget books, you'll see one is roughly just over 10 million and the other one is just over 200 million. So that's where the $215 million budget comes from. That's for housing. The other question in terms of the savings in the charts. So again, the presentation today is a very high level. When you look at the transmittal report, so the service review was one initiative. So that highlighted around 21.9 or so. I'm just going off memory here and what the mayor referenced. Then we have a number of other departmental initiatives. So this is where we get into the complexities of the different tax levies. So what I highlighted was kind of sticking strictly to the citywide tax supported services, not to convolute the rate program, the transit program, our board, our partners. So in the presentation, that's where you would have seen additional 2.9 million, where city departments, as an example, we renegotiated some of our IT contracts. We were able to yield $1 million savings. And I also spoke about the continuous improvement initiatives. So continuous improvement initiatives is a core in this city. It has been for a long time. And we have another $2 million there where we were able to forego pressure coming on the page to avoid, and again, an incremental tax increase to use that. A prime example is the stand-up of our data processing center that council directed us to do earlier this year. As opposed to going and leasing an external facility, we're able to leverage internal space within my department and the hybrid work market arrangements, so that we didn't have to lease additional space. So that's another example there in terms of the math behind what you see in my presentation at 26.8. Once you go through the transmittal report and throughout the budget book, you're going to see a much bigger number combined with the 54 million that we achieved in 2023 budget.
And the total revenue was the other one.
Yeah, so the total revenue. So again, if you refer to the transmittal report, in one of the supporting documents, we do provide what we flag as corporate summaries. So if you go down to the revenue section, you're going to see our own source revenue line, which is like our user fees. You're going to see some fines, which is like our Provincial Offence Act fines. You're going to see our property tax revenue as well. So if you take the sum of those, that's where you're going to see the increase. So the sum of, there's a column right to your far right that you'll see the change over 2023 versus 2024. And the sum of those will get you to the 222 million.
Thank you.
Second follow-up question. Wanted to, I mean, I totally hear that you're very adamant that there's no cuts here, that these savings do not equate to cuts. But I'm curious, there's a number of what I think council has rightly identified as crises for the city, from climate change to housing and homelessness to transit. And some of the spending increases in the context of a $5.7 billion budget seem quite modest to get a handle on those crises. What do you say to residents that might be concerned about whether it's enough to meet what we're dealing with? And can you also speak to the compromises between that spending and the desire to keep taxes low?
It's always a balancing act. So, we're trying to address the affordability crisis by not increasing taxes. We're trying to address other challenges by investing in priority areas. I think we've done a great job of taking money from areas where it's not needed and reinvesting it in our priorities. We're seeing a big jump in the amount of money we're putting towards affordable housing as one example. Between the affordable housing and the transitional housing, it's a $10.8 million increase on what used to be a $15 million budget item. So it's a 67% increase or more in what we're spending in that area year over year. There are other areas where we're increasing our investment. So we have established as a council priority areas, and we're investing in those priorities. But I will say as well that the big chunks of money are not going to come from the city of Ottawa to address issues like housing and homelessness, to address public transit operating shortfalls, to address the mental health crisis and the opioid crisis. The big chunks of money have to come from other levels of government, and we have to keep putting pressure on other levels of government to come through for us, because our budget will never be able to handle the kinds of pressures and demands that some of these crises are creating. We will need support from other levels of government to deliver on those priorities.
Thank you. We'll now go to Elise Skura at CBC Ottawa.
Thank you. My first question is for the mayor, and it's kind of just drawing on what you last said. So obviously in the past, we have had budgets that thought that the federal government and the provincial government was going to provide a certain amount, and then it didn't come through. And we're not the only city that's kind of in these dire straits and relying on this. So what are the strategies that you're going to be bringing to lobbying the governments that are different than in the past?
I don't know if it's a different strategy. The strategies take time, and we're a new term of council. It hasn't even been a year yet. We've been working closely with the provincial government. We had to rebuild the relationship with the provincial government and rebuild, some of those connections and establish the kinds of conversations and regular touch points required to put some of our issues on the table with them. I'm pleased with the progress so far. The provincial government's been very open to what we have to say. I've had a number of conversations with the premier where he said he's willing to listen. There's a discussion going on between the provincial government and the city of Toronto right now about finding financial solutions for that city. We're watching that very closely, and I will follow up immediately after that to make sure that if Toronto is getting help, that Ottawa gets its fair share of help as well. So there's a lot that's been going on, and some of these issues are new. We've been having more regular conversations recently with the federal government about the number of people who are arriving in Ottawa seeking asylum. And unfortunately, many of them are ending up in our shelter system, which is not the experience we want a new Canadian to have, a new arrival in our country. And it's not what the shelter system was designed for. So it's putting pressure on the shelter system. So we're talking to the federal government about our needs in that area. So it's constantly evolving, and the conversations are continuing, but we will need help from other levels of government to meet our challenges.
All right. And my second question is for Cyril Rogers. I was just wondering if you could comment on how much more challenging perhaps this budget was at this time, given the state of economics, than in previous years.
One of the biggest challenges we face this year is two budgets in a year. new council, term of council priorities. So a significant amount of work that we had to do and deliver within 9 months effectively. From a challenge perspective, I think Mr. Mayor spoke a little bit about it. When we look at the overall impacts in the external market conditions, now that impacts our services, I don't want to say we're isolated, but it impacts us differently. Specifically, when we look at our collective agreements, we do have yield the benefit of having settled, one of our biggest cost drivers. The continuous improvement initiatives that you will see throughout this organization always helps us kind of achieve what we need to achieve from the direction of council. And we're always looking at being more effective and efficient. We have a lot of good tools in our finance team, like your treasury. We hedge our contracts for fuel. So a lot of these external factors, we have risk mitigation strategies internally to try and do that. But even taking that away, I think it has been a challenging year to deliver a budget. But the collaboration that we're seeing, around the management table and with councillors that I referenced in my presentation, certainly help us deliver what we delivered today in terms of the draft 2024 budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Liam Fox of the Canadian Press.
Hi there. My first question is for Cyril Rogers. I'm just kind of wondering if you guys have any expectations for when this $210 million fund and 21.8 million more towards affordable housing will actually go towards these projects, or if these are just more in the long term for now in the capital investment.
So this incremental funding, what you'll see is we're going to bring forward the refreshed housing long range financial plan later this month to the Planning and Housing Committee. And that will tie in with my colleague Clara's housing plan in terms of the investments where that will go. So she's also working on revising her capital plan with this new significant increase in funding. So that will be to come.
Okay, thanks. And then I'll leave my second question more open to the mayor. I'm just wondering if there's anything in this budget before you get it to December where you need to approve it, if there's anything you think you can improve or refine it, and maybe you could echo council's sentiments on this too.
Echo council sentiments in terms of
what you think you can approve or refine in this
Sure.
budget before it is tabled for good or approved.
So it's always a process, and the budget's going to go through committees, and every councillor is going to look at the budget and see what the impact of the budget is in his or her ward. And we'll be listening to councillors to make sure that the budget's delivering on their priorities. It's very important to me that every councillor have an opportunity to offer their comments and feedback on the budget and how it impacts not just citywide priorities, but their priorities in their wards. So we'll listen to all of that and collect all that feedback and adjust accordingly. But I think it's a very strong budget to start with, and I'm looking forward to the conversation from here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. Thank you. Merci.